In this video, I'm going to teach you the basic stuff you need to learn in Python to learn web scraping. This is what you will frequently use when scraping a website, regardless of the framework you use in Python. So, Beautiful Soup, Selenium, or Scrapy. So, I assume that you at least know how to print a basic hello world in Python, so I'm not gonna show you how to do that, but we're going to start with lists in Python. So in Python, lists are used to store multiple items in a single variable. To create a list, we have to place the elements inside square brackets, separated by commas. So let's create a list of some states in the US. So I'm going to write states and I'm going to set this equal to, I open square brackets, and now I'm going to write 4 states. So first I write California, then the second is going to be Texas, the third is going to be Florida, and the last one is New York. So these are 4 states and these are inside square brackets. So this represents the list and the name of the list is states. Also, all the elements are the same type, so they are string because we're using here double quotes to set this to strings. Now, each item or element in the list has an index, which is the position in the list. Python uses zero-based indexing. That means the first element, so California, has an index 0, while the second, Texas, has index 1, and so on. To access an element by its index, we need to use square brackets. So this is how you do it. Let's say we want to get the first element. So we write states, which is the name of the list, and then square brackets and write the position of the element. So in this case, the first position, so 0. Now if we print this, so I write print. To run this in PyCharm, we right click and then click on run, this one. So run, and then we get the first element or the first item, which is California. So now if we want the fourth element, we write number 3 because this is the element 0, 1, 2, and 3. So now we run and we're supposed to get New York, and yeah, we got New York. Another way to get an element by its position is using negative indexes. But in this case, we're gonna get elements starting on the last position of the list. Also, instead of using indexes from 0 and above, as we did before, we're gonna use indexes from -1 and below. So let me show you here. So let's imagine we want to get the last element. So far, we got it with states square brackets 3, but if we want to index from the last position, we have to use -1. So let's test this code and run, and we still get New York. So this is -1, this is -2, -3, and -4. So let's try now with states -4. So it should be California. So let's see. And yeah, we got California. So why do we need lists for web scraping? Well, lists are necessary to store all the data scraped, so we can export it in a CSV file or JSON file later. Also, indexing is really important when we locate multiple elements with the same name and we want to select one in particular. For example, sometimes we locate multiple elements and we want to get the first or the last one. So we can use index 0 or index -1 to get to one of those. So now that you're familiar with lists, now I'm going to show you how for loops and if statement works. A typical step after storing elements in a list is looping through it so you can work with the elements. To do so, we have to use the for and in keywords. Let's print each element of the states list we created before. So first, I'm going to write for, then state in states. And here I'm going to write just state. So print state. So this is the syntax of the for loop. So we have for an element inside the list, and then in the body of the for loop we write print state. So this is the action, what we actually want to do with the element. Remember that for this for loop to work, you need to write the colon at the end of the for statement. So now I'm going to run this code, but first I'm going to comment this out. So we only get this result. So now right click and then run, and we got here the four states. So here we looped through the elements inside the states list, and then we printed each of them. Okay, that's it for the for loop. Now let's see the if statement. So the if statement works with a condition. If the condition is true, the body of the if block is gonna be executed. But if it's not true, it's not gonna be executed. Let me show you an example of this. So here I write if, and then I write a condition. So for example, if the state is equal to Florida, then, so I write colon, print the state. So now let me put this if block inside the for loop, so this makes more sense. So here I have this for loop. We were looping through the elements inside the states list, and then if state is equal to Florida, so when the state is equal to Florida, you print this. But if it's not, if it's California or if it's New York, don't print it. So as a result, we will get only one element printed. So now let me show you. I'm gonna run this script and let's see what happens. So yeah, in the results, we only got Florida. But this doesn't mean we didn't loop through each element. Actually, we're still looping through each element. But here, we only print the element that is equal to Florida. Okay, now let me tell you why this is important for web scraping. So usually when you get elements inside a list, but you can't do anything with those elements unless you loop through it, because when you loop through it, you get the element alone. So you can get the text, for example, or you can do anything else with that element. But if it's inside a list, you cannot do anything. You cannot get the text or any other attribute. So if we loop through it, we can get, for example, the text. It's usually what we want to get from the website, the data. So a typical step when web scraping is getting multiple elements inside the list, then looping through that list and getting the text inside the for loop. So it's something like this. Instead of printing this, we write a state that text, and this is how we get the text of the element. Anyway, I'm going to explain you this much better when we check Selenium or Beautiful Soup or Scrapy. So far we've seen how to work with the data we scraped. We imagined that this was our list that we scraped, and then that here we were working with each element scraped. But now it's time to show you how we're going to export the data we scrape. So first I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to leave this here because we might use it. And here I'm going to show you how we can export data in Python. So there are different ways to export data in Python. And in this video, I'm going to show you two ways to do it. Okay, the first way is one of the simplest ways to export data in Python, and it's using the with open as pattern. So before explaining you what this means or what this is, I'm going to write so you can understand a bit better. So I write with open, then parentheses, then as, and here I'm going to write a random name. So I write file, for example, and then column. So first, let's start with open. Open is a function that takes in a file name and a mode. So here you need here two elements. The first is a file name. So I'm going to write just a file name. And here it's the mode. And there are three modes: the write mode, the read mode, and the pen mode. So let's start just with the write mode because it's the one we're going to use the most. And to use the write mode, we have to write W. So this is the letter for the write mode. Okay, what the write mode does is deletes the existing file content, creating the file if it doesn't already exist, and then allows you to write to the file. Here we're going to create a file name and we have to write the extension. So usually we create txt files, so I'm write just txt. So here in this write mode, I'm going to create a txt file name, and here I'm going to write test because I want to do a test. So this is going to be a test and this is going to be a txt file. So this is going to be the name of the file we're going to create, and also this file is going to be created in our current directory. So basically in the directory where this Python script is located. Now the with is a useful keyword that helps us manage two related operations that need to be executed as a pair. So for example, here I'm gonna open this, and then here in the body I'm gonna do another operation. So for example, I'm gonna take this file, and what I want to do is write a message. So I do file.write, and inside, let's say I want to write data successfully scraped. So with this with, we can handle two or more operations, and also we don't even need to close this file that we opened, because after you open a file you need to close it, but we don't need to do it because we're using this with keyword, and this will help us close it as soon as we leave this with block. Okay, and then the as keyword is just a way to rename this expression. So instead of writing this again, we just replace it for file. So this is represented by the file. And here we can reuse the file to do some operation here as we did. So now I'm gonna right click and run this script so we can see what we get. So here we didn't get anything because we didn't print anything, but we only executed this code here. So this is gonna create a new file named test, and it's a text file because it's txt. So this file should be located in our current directory. So I'm gonna open this here on the left, and here as you can see I have a new file named test, and I'm gonna double click on it, and here I got this message that I wrote before, and it's data successfully scraped. So our code worked, and now I'm going back to the script here, and I'm gonna show you the second way to export the data. So in the first way, we didn't need to install any third-party library. We just used the built-in with keyword and the as keyword and open function, but we didn't install any third-party library. But for the second way, we have to install the pandas library. So I'm gonna comment this out. And now to install a library, you have to go to the terminal or command prompt, and then you have to write pip install pandas. So I'm gonna show you here how you can do it in PyCharm, because in PyCharm we have a terminal too. So it's in the lower left corner. So here it's the terminal button, and now I'm gonna click on it. So here we have the terminal, and here you can install any library. So I'm gonna write pip install and then the name of the library, which is pandas. So I write pandas. Then you press enter and run that command. So I immediately got a message, and it says that I already had this installed. So it says requirement already satisfied. In your case, you have to wait a couple of minutes or maybe some seconds for this to install correctly. Okay, now I'm gonna close this terminal, and to use this library, first we have to import it. So we write here at the beginning of the script, we write import pandas. And here usually you rename these pandas as PD. So we use the as keyword and write PD. So instead of writing pandas, the next time we only have to write PD. Okay, now to easily create a data frame, we will need to put the lists we created before into a dictionary. So first, apart from this states list, I'm going to create a second list named population. So I'm going to write population, and now I'm going to paste the data of the population of each state. So here I pasted the data of the population of each state. So this is the one of California and this is the one of New York. So now I'm going to put the states and population lists inside a dictionary. So I'm going to create this dictionary and I'm going to name it dict_states. So now to create a dictionary, we have to use curly braces. So we open curly braces, and now the syntax of a dictionary is a key, then colon, and then the value. So let me show you here. First, the key, which should be inside quotes. So first, my first key is going to be the states. So I write states, then colon, and then the name of the list. So we write states. This is my list. So this is the key that I want to create, and this is the value, which is the list that it's here. It might look redundant because both have the name state, but they are different. One is the value and one is the key. So now I'm going to create the second key. So I write population, and then I'm going to write the name of the list or the value. So population. Here I wrote the key in capital letter so we can differentiate the key with the list, but actually you can even write the same name. So here population and here states. But just to differentiate them, I just use capital letter. So these keys are unique, so you can create another pair of key value with the same key. And these dictionaries also help us better manage the lists in Python. So now it's time to create the data frame. So to create a data frame, we write PD, which is pandas, as I told you before. Then we write that, then data frame, and then we use the from dict method. So basically we're saying PD, we're getting the data frame and we want to create a data frame from a dictionary. So here we only have to copy dict states and then paste it inside parentheses. And then we have to name this data frame. So I'm going to write equal to, and here df, so stands for data frame, underscore states. So this is my data frame, and now I'm gonna print it. So print df underscore states, and now let's see the output. So I run this script, and now we have a data frame, and here we have the states list in the first column, and in the second column we have the population list. So this has the format of an Excel spreadsheet, and we can even export this data frame to a CSV file. So to export it, we only have to write the name of the data frame, in this case df underscore states, and then use that to CSV method. So we write that to and then underscore CSV. Then we open parentheses, and inside parentheses we write the name of the CSV file we want to create. So we have to give it a name. In my case, I'm going to name it states.csv. You have to include the format of this file. So in this case, .csv. So now I'm going to comment this out, and we're going just to execute this code. So right click, then run this. Now in our current working directory, we should find a file named states.csv. So I'm going to close this one and open here, and here I have the states.csv file. So I'm going to double click on it, and we have the CSV file inside of PyCharm. So it's here, it's the states column and the population column. These numbers 0, 1, 2, and 3, they are just the index. Data frames work with index, and in case you don't want to export the index, you have to set it to false. So here you go and add the argument, and you write index and then set it to false, and just the same process, run this. I'm gonna close this so it's updated hopefully. So I'm gonna open states.csv, and as you can see here, we don't have the index anymore, but only the data with the states and the population. So now I'm gonna close this one, and we're back to the script. Okay, so far we've seen how to work with data and then how to export that data. That should be enough to get you started with web scraping. But now we're gonna see how we can handle an exception error. Exception errors are typical in web scraping. When scraping a website, you will come across different exceptions. For example, sometimes the element might not be in the DOM, or the element might not be visible yet, and so on. So to handle these exceptions, we're going to use the try and except statement. So here I created a new script, and here I created a list named new_list, and this has 4 elements. So the first 3 elements are numbers or integers, and the last one is a text or a string. So this is the first time we see a list with different type of elements. Before, we've seen a list only with integers or only with strings, but now we have a mix. So I created this list in purpose so I can show you an error that Python can throw when you work with different type of elements. So I'm gonna do a for loop. So I'm gonna loop through this list. So I write for element in new list. So we're going to loop through each element in this new list. And then I'm going to print element divided by 2. So this is gonna break when we get to California, because 2 is a number, so we can divide it by 2. The result will be 1. Then 4, it'll be the same, 6 the same, but with California, you cannot actually divide a string with a number. So Python should throw us an error if we do this. So let me show you here. I'm gonna run this and let's see what happens. And here we got an error. So it was fine in the first iteration, in the second, the third, but in the fourth iteration we got an error that it says unsupported operand type for slash. So it's string and integer. So we can mix this in a division. So here it's not a big deal if we made this mistake because we can easily fix it. However, when scraping a website, if we leave the code as it is, we won't be able to store and then export the data because the code will break completely. This is why we have to use the except statement to let Python know how to handle an exception and then skip to the next iteration. So now let me show you how this works. So we have the try and the except keywords. So let's start with try. We write try, then colon, and here we have to indent this. So in the try block, we execute the same operation we want to make. So far it's fine. It's just what we did before. We just added the try statement, but we will still get the error. So to handle this error, we have to use the except statement. So in the except statement, I'm going to write a message. So I said print and then write the message, the element is not a number. So Python will execute the code following the try statement as a normal part of the script. However, Python will only execute the code following the except statement when the code runs into an error. So just when the code runs into an error, this except block will be executed. So I'm going to run this to show you this in action. So I right click and then run, and now we didn't get an error. So let's see what happened. So first, 2 is a number, so 2 divided by 2, 1. Then 4 divided by 2, 2. And then 6 divided by 2, 3. So far we just needed that try block because it's working fine. We don't get errors because we're making an operation between numbers. But here in the last element, we are supposed to get an error here. So what Python is going to do is to go to the except block. So it goes here, and instead of throwing us an error, we're gonna get this message. So it's gonna print this message that says the element is not a number. So this is what we got instead of the error message. So although the fourth element isn't a number, the code didn't break. And this is good because when we scrape a website, we don't want the code to break just for one single element that maybe wasn't correctly scraped, or maybe the data was corrupted, or something weird happened with a specific element. So we don't want this to break just for one element, but we want it to pass to the next iteration, so at least most of the data will be correctly scraped. We're going to use this try and except statement a lot in this course, so try to remember this. Okay, the last thing we're going to see is the while break statement. This is basically part of a workaround we use when there are some limitations in the scraping tool we're using. So when a web scraping tool lacks some functionality, you have two options. Either you learn from scratch how to use another scraping tool, or you can find a workaround. A good example of this is pagination. Scraping through multiple pages can be easily done on Scrapy. However, on Selenium and Beautiful Soup, you might need to use the while loop. Here is the format of the while loop. So here I wrote while, which is the keyword, and then we have an expression, and this represents the block to be repeatedly executed. This is evaluated in Boolean context, so it can be true or false. If it's true, the body is executed, so we're going to execute this statement, and then we're going to check the expression again. But if the expression becomes false, the execution proceeds to the immediate code below the while loop. So for example, if we have here print, and here we have like a message, I want to write message. So if this is false, this is not going to be executed, but the immediate code below the while loop, so this is going to be executed. So now let's see an example. So I'm going to create a variable n, and this is going to be equal to a number. So just our random number 4, and then I'm going to write an expression here. So this has to be a Boolean. So I write n greater than 0. And then on the statement, I print this n, and then I do the following. I'm going to decrease the value of this n in 1. So I write n equal to n minus 1. So on each iteration, this 4 is going to be reduced by 1. So first it's going to be 3, then 2, then 1, and then 0. And when it's 0, this is going to break, and we're going to get this message. So let's test this out. I'm going to right click here and then run this script. So as you can see here, we got the value 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then we didn't get the value 0, because when n got the value 0, here 0 is not greater than 0, but it's equal. So here this expression was true and it became false. So when it became false, the while loop was broken, and then the immediate code below the loop was executed. So we printed the message. So here we have the message instead of 0. Now another way to break this while loop is using the break statement. So I'm going to add here an if condition, and it's going to be if n is equal to 2, then break. So now this is going to be similar as we did before, but now this is going to stop when n gets the value of 2. So in this case, I'm going to change the message. I'm going to write loop ended. And now I'm going to run this code. So we test this out. And here we only got the value 4 and 3. So let's check what happened. When the value was 4, here it was printed n, so 4, and then 4 minus 1, 3. And then it went to the next iteration because 3 is different from 2. So now it's 3, 3 is greater than 0, and here printed 3. So we got here 3. And then 3 minus 1 is 2, and 2 is equal to 2. So we executed this break statement, and with this, all this loop was ended, and we got this message here. And we didn't get a value of 2 because before that iteration, this while loop broke. And that's it. Now you know the basic stuff in Python to learn web scraping. So now you can learn either Selenium or Beautiful Soup or Scrapy. But make sure you also watch the HTML basics video in this course so you don't have problems when learning web scraping.